Gonna move over here. What's up, guys? I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm a little jet lagged, so if I'm a little loopy, I'm sorry ahead of time. We're gonna talk about iOS audio and overcoming its challenges. I know it said difficulty on the pamphlet, but it's really its challenges. I just wanted to word it a little bit different. So yeah, let's get started. I got a lot of slides here. So you guys probably don't know me. I'm Fernando LABARTHE. I'm lead sound designer at Z2. We've done games like Metal Storm, Wingman, Metal Storm, Aces, Nitro, Shadow Slayer, to name a few. A small disclaimer, if I curse during this presentation, I'm sorry ahead of time. So yeah, let's just get started. What do we do at Z2? We do mobile games, specifically for Android, OS X, and iOS. But since iOS is our meat and potatoes, we're going to be talking about iOS. As a side note, we all know that Apple releases new hardware like the iPhone 4, the iPod 5, the 5S, the new iPad Air, Mini, whatever. And they always update their software as well, right? iOS 5, 6, 7. But underneath that is Xcode. That's our main compiler, and that's what we use to build all of our tools. So yeah, that's what we use. There are a lot of challenges that come with iOS audio, but I'm going to break it down into 3 different ones, specifically in mix and balance, implementation, and production. So let's digest these a little bit more. As far as mix and balance goes, you got to ask yourself, how do players actually listen to our games? And to answer that, you got to ask yourself, how many players actually listen to our games? Is it important? Is it relevant? Well, we did a flurry test where 73% or 78%, I think I said earlier, but 78% in the US actually listen to our games. 90% actually in China and Korea. Here in EU, 58%. But how do they listen? I mean, do they use a speaker device, like the speaker that's on the device? Do they use headphones? Do they use AirPlay? 96% use the speaker on the device. So since that's the way that most of the users listen to our games, we're going to focus in on that. So the issue is that all the devices sound different. Like the iPod 4 will sound dramatically different than the iPad Air or the iPad 2. Same with the iPhone 5S. So I did a little test. Well, I grabbed all the devices that we had at Z2, we laid them all out, and we recorded them piping out pink noise. And we have frequency responses for each one of these. On the left-hand side, it's just flat. It's like if I were to grab the device with the speaker held out. But the reality is that nobody plays their game like this. I mean, everyone's copying their device, right? So that creates like an acoustical shell, either sideways or vertically or horizontally. So the second graph is holding the device, like copying the device itself, right? And the last graph is the comparison between the two. This is with 90% of the volume up. The ones that stuck out the most to me was the 5S. Even though that you cup the device, the frequencies pretty much remain the same, but there was like a 10 dB boost on them. The iPad 2, though, had a huge boost at 4,000 hertz, and all the frequencies just got, they were just nuts. So the iPad 2, when you cup it, you get a huge boost at 4K. It doesn't sound that great. The iPhone 5S sounds awesome. So what are the solutions? We use Airfoil or speakers to allow us to play Pro Tools straight into any of your device, right? Any device that you have, like the iPhone 5S or whatever. But it's not really realistic, right? Because the way that you play games is with music, ambient, sound effects all playing back at once. This only really allows you to play one sound at a time. You can put everything on the timeline and play it back that way, but again, it's not really realistic. So you make a build and then you test the game, right? And you start reiterating on the content. So either you change the file itself or you change the config file on it and you reiterate it on it, right? So Airfoil, big friend, test the game, reiterate. Awesome. So let's talk about implementation. There's 2 sides to this, bundle size and tools and API. Let's talk about bundle size. I think Apple or AT&T just increase their bundle size to 100 megabytes. So that's what you can download over the air. It used to be 50 megabytes. So essentially what that means is that you can download via 3G or 4G a game that's under or about 100 megabytes, right? Now, to us, that means a lot, right? Because if your game weighs more than that, that means that the user needs to download the game via Wi-Fi. And you lose a lot of users that way. So that's a huge no-no. So what do? We give ourselves a budget. As far as the sound department, we give ourselves about 10 megabytes, right, which is 10%. And based off of that, we split it up, right? 4 megabytes for music, 2 megabytes for ambience, 4 megabytes for sound effects. And you can alter these any way that you want. You can even throw in VO if you really need to, right? But yeah, just give yourself a budget ahead of time. So the question is, how do you make it fit? I don't know if everyone knows this, but like one music file can easily go over 10 megabytes. So how do you make it fit? Well, according to the core audio manual, thanks to Apple, these are the formats that they allow, right? So you have to compress your audio files, right? We use CAF, MP3, AACs, and waves. And there's 2 ways to play these back, right? You can either stream it or you can load it into RAM. The ones that we use are MP3s to stream and CAF files for RAM. CAF stands for core audio format, which is the format that Apple recommends. As a side note, all of the sounds that we export are negative 3 dB, peak 32 or 22K at 16-bit. And another side note is CAF is actually just the wrapper. The audio content itself can be a lot of different formats. Like it can be WAV, PCM, IMA4, AAC, AACH. Just as a small comparison for you guys, like a 42-second mono file, 44 116-bit, which is CD quality, will weigh about 3.8 megabytes, right? IMA4 is 1 megabyte, so that's about 4:1 compression ratio. The ones that I really want to talk about is the AAC at 22K. It saves you about 100 kilobytes between 32 and 22K. But AACH compresses a lot harder, but it only saves you about 10 kilobytes. So, and you add a lot of artifacts by doing that. But it'll save you some space if you really need to, right? Just keep that in mind. Just use AAC 32 or 22K. So tools and APIs, why are these important? Because it allows you to control your audio. What tools do we need? We need gain. We need to be able to change the volume, pitch variance, voice priority, crossfading, looping, 3D positional audio. All these are really important in order to make your game sound awesome, right? So how do you get these tools, right? Well, there's 3 main contenders for this: Fmod, Wise, and we use OpenAL. And the reason is we release games like, I don't know, 4 or 5 times a year, and multi-platform. It would cost us over 20 grand for each one of those games with the amount of money that we invest in them. And that's, I mean, if OpenAL is free and it gets us the tools that we need, why wouldn't we use that, right? So that's why we use OpenAL. Now granted, it doesn't come with a fancy UI or whatever, but it gets the job done. And as long as it sounds awesome, that's what we want. 10 minutes. Okay, baking in your sound effects or baking in your effects like digital reverb, delays, any convolution reverb. They sound great, but sometimes they eat up the processor. So just bake it into your sound effects. Sometimes, you know, it'll work for you. Configuration files, we use JSON. So production. Now this isn't specifically about games. It's more about production in general. So the producer will crack the whip to make sure that the game is being shipped on time. Design is sort of like the director of the film. You know, they get all the rules, and all the story will be plot. All the plot will be set up by them. Engineering will make sure that everything works. And then art makes everything look and sound amazing, right? But everyone funnels down to make an awesome product. So how do you keep everyone organized, I guess, is the issue here. Well, we use Scrum or Agile as a form of us to move our project forward, right? With daily stand-ups, we talk with team leaders and different team members to see what did they work on yesterday, what are they working on today, right? And 2-week sprints allows us to keep everything organized, and we pull everything from the backlog, right? So for example, okay, the project is gonna take 6 months, okay? Let's split it up into two big milestones, 3 months apart, and then every 2 weeks, let's say 2 weeks will be ambience, and we'll finish all the ambience in the game in 2 weeks or a week or whatever. But as long as you have all of your assets allocated, and then you pull from that, right, from that backlog, and then that's how you create the game. That's how Z2 at least works. Instead of like creating your assets in front and then at the end having the end product is already like envisioned, and then you start pulling from there, right? So, in conclusion, I think I'm on time, right? Maybe. All right, we use Airfoil. Reiterate on your content. It allows you to play back audio out of any device, which is great for testing. Give yourself a budget, knowing that there's only 100 megabytes that you can spit over the air. We use OpenAL, it's free, you know. And use Scrum, you know, coordinate with your different team members to make sure that everyone's in the same page. So yeah, those are some of the difficulties or challenges, and that's how we at Z2 overcome them. Does anyone have any questions? I went by pretty fast, but I think I got like 3 minutes left. Sure.
In your personal experience, the average duration for a game, for a casual game theme, for example, it's better to do a 2 minutes theme or
like a musical theme?
Yes.
How long it takes me to make one? Yeah. I guess that sort of depends on like how many things. There isn't really a rule. I mean, let's say, for example, and it depends on the game, right? Certain games will demand, I don't know, there's 5 different levels, and each different level will demand a new music track. I budget myself at least 1 to 2 days to compose the track, and that's temping, talking to producers or designers to make sure that it's composed the way that we want it to sound, right? Because at the end of the day, I mean, as long as it sounds awesome and the lead designer is happy and I'm happy, then I know that it's meant to sound the way that we want it to sound. Does that make sense? Yeah, so 1 or 2 days is what I tend to budget for as far as like one music track goes, right? No questions. What? That's cool. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for coming out.